Oh, definitely. It's in my title. I'm an emeritus professor of applied linguistics. I studied in the late 1970s in Edinburgh for my master's in applied linguistics with Pitt Corder and Henry Widdowson and Alan Davis and a whole bunch of very distinguished people. And yes, we were definitely calling ourselves applied linguists from then on. But actually, in my own career, I have moved between departments of education and linguistics and applied linguistics. My central interest has always been language learning and teaching, and I'm very grateful actually for the fact that I did my PhD in an education department, which gave me a broad understanding of where language learning fits in people's wider education. Well, clearly it has. I mean, the main starting impulse for applied linguistics was clearly centered on language learning and teaching, putting that on a more theoretically sound footing, developing methodological practices, really to serve the new language learning needs, the mass language learning needs that followed Second World War and the development, if you like, the movement towards globalization. Yes, applied linguistics' initial impulse clearly was about language learning and teaching. But of course, the discipline has greatly broadened out since, so that if you look at how AILA scientific commissions evolved or special interest groups of our own association, Baal, evolved, you see that areas like language policy or language in the media or language and migration have become a whole field of, if you like, sociolinguistic topics have arrayed themselves alongside language learning and teaching in the last couple of decades. There was an early, very substantial debate about whether what the place of linguistic theory should be, how central it should be in applied linguistics. It was the sort of applied linguistics versus linguistics applied debate, if you like, it was known as. But I think what's won out is the more applied interpretation that you start with a practical problem and look in an interdisciplinary way at different aspects of the language sciences insofar as they can be helpful. Now, I have to say that personally, as somebody with an interest in second language acquisition, I sometimes feel that we've moved away perhaps from theorizing what we do a little too far, but there's no doubt that it's the focus on real life and practical problems and issues where language is relevant that is dominant in applied linguistics today. Well, at AILA, I have never been an officer or involved in its administration. I have been a foot soldier, if you like. I've attended many congresses, starting with Lund in 1981, have found them immensely beneficial as a young scholar, as a means to international networking, learning the ropes of how a big congress works, what it's like to turn up at 8 a.m. for your talk and nobody comes, all those things. But then as a more senior scholar, it's been a wonderful opportunity to mentor people and bring young scholars into those same kinds of networks and develop them. So in more recently at the congresses I've attended, I've very much enjoyed being involved in collaborative events. For example, a symposium at the Groningen online conference, which involved a lot of younger scholars. So it's really as a networking and meeting up and relationship building organization that I have personally valued AILA the most, I think. Now, in terms of BAL, the British Association for Applied Linguistics, I have been an active officer there. I have been secretary and I have been chair of the association. I also, in the 1990s, actually edited the OUP journal Applied Linguistics, which is sponsored varyingly by BAL, AILA, AIL. Now, BAL was a founding organization in AILA. Indeed, the second Congress was held in Cambridge on the initiative of people like Peter Strevens, Pitt Corder, John Trim, who were all people whose view of education and view of the world was very much formed, I think, by their participation in World War II, where they all played some active role, whether as pacifist ambulance drivers or as soldiers, and they were extremely committed to European unification, integration, internationalism, and viewed AILA as immensely important, therefore, as a way of bringing linguists together, language educators together. And so Baal people were important in the founding of AILA. I think Baal has had an interesting relationship with AILA. In the 1990s, Baal Initiative, and particularly, I think here we have to credit Jill Bourne, a later officer in Baal, was very instrumental in pushing the equality and solidarity agenda within AILA. Following the Thessaloniki Congress, at that Congress, there had been actually a protest meeting of women participants in the Congress in view of what was seen as an unequal representation of women, among the plenary speakers and so on. And following that, AILA listened and did. Jill Bourne, in fact, became a member of the executive board and chaired a subcommittee which developed policy for AILA in terms of equality and solidarity. So that was a very positive engagement with AILA on the part of Baal, which was also very good for Baal, because actually it forced Baal to look at ourselves as well and ask the same questions of ourselves that we were asking of AILA. And in fact, out of that came our guidelines on good practice in applied linguistics, which was first published in 1994, around the time that AILA itself was engaged in all this positive activity. Baal has maintained its commitment and attention to equality and solidarity issues ever since in various ways. So I think that was a very good engagement on both sides, if you like. Actually, do you know the best plenary I've ever heard in my life, which was Liyue on Chinglish. Somehow he was positive, he was funny, he was he was respectful, and he used his position as an international scholar to really open up for us the whole business of the complexity of the use of English in China in a way that is very, very memorable. So thank you, Liyue, for that. Well, I suppose, as an older scholar, I see old challenges just continuing to confront us. I'm personally, my career has been spent researching and with interests in languages other than English, and the dominance of English in academic work and in research is so obvious, despite goodwill and commitments and interest in multilingualism, a front where we have to continue to be very self-conscious and to struggle to respect and promote research and investigation in other languages than English. And of course, we have not solved the solidarity issue. Applied linguistics, flourishes in the wealthy world, but is still quite precarious elsewhere. I don't know, but I did think a very positive aspect, for example, of the online Groningen Congress was its relative accessibility for people around the world. So although we're all enjoying being back face to face, I do think that we shouldn't forget that dimension of access and how far, if we work systematically to maintain, if you like, hybrid activity or online versions of what we do face to face, perhaps that will help us. Perhaps those new technologies will actually help us to continue the spread and the evolution of applied linguistics. So it's not just a market-driven pursuit, but we can make a reality. The commitments we're making to diversity and inclusion.